Deltarune Chapter 5 is finally coming out, and you know what that means? Yeah, it's time for another recap. If you haven't watched my first recap, you can find it in the description. This one is for everyone who needs a refresher before playing Chapter 5, so let's get into it. Chapter 3 starts immediately after the cutscene we saw at the end of Chapter 2. Susie stays at Chris's house for a sleepover. When everyone is sleeping, Chris gets up and stabs the ground, creating a dark fountain, which makes Chris and Susie wake up in the dark world. They walk for a bit and somehow Ralsei ends up finding them. He says that he felt a dark presence and hurried here. Susie wants Ralsei to join them in the light world someday. He says that he'd love to go, but he's a darkner, so he can't physically go to the light world. He explains that in the light world, everything is as you see, as long as there is light. But when it becomes darker than dark, things start to look different. As we know, the dark fountains give birth to dark worlds. Ralsei says they shouldn't worry about his feelings because nobody in the dark world is truly real. But Susie disagrees because Ralsei and the friends she made are real to her. Suddenly, a voice cuts them off, as if it's some kind of a TV show. Remember the TV in the living room? This is Tenna. They become contestants of Tenna's game show, and here, instead of money, they get points. Once they introduce themselves, Tenna gives them controllers to play a Zelda-like video game. The first area appears to be a desert. The goal is to find 3 keys in Mooncloud Stone, enter the pyramid, and face the final challenge. There is a shop where you can use points to heal or to buy a key. You get points by finding them in the world, or by doing battles and quizzes. Along the way, you find the power croissant that allows Susie to pull up weeds and throw things, which is necessary to collect keys. There are different NPCs you can talk to and enemies you can fight along the way. Some of them are familiar to us, like Lancer, but there are a few we've never seen before, like El Nino and La Nino, the Weather Channel hosts. You fight them to get the Mooncloud Stone, but before finishing the fight, they get mad at each other and split. Once you have all 3 keys in the Mooncloud Stone, the party enters the pyramid. They end up doing the first physical challenge, where they must cook and serve customers before time or popularity runs out. After completing the challenge, Tenna reveals that there will be a second round. He transports them to the green room, where they can walk around, buy stuff, and talk to everyone. After a bit of exploring, they find Tenna to begin the next round. In this round, they're playing the same game, except this time it's a desert island, where the goal is to reunite 2 lovers and enter the floating Atlantis stadium. You also get a camera that allows you to take photos of anything in the world. You need to get 3 specific photos to progress. Once you take all 3 quest photos, you unlock a raft. They use it to bring El Nino and La Nino to the shore and reunite them, but Rule's card makes it awkward. But they seem to be fine with it as long as they're together. And despite the awkwardness, the bridge to Atlantis finally appears. On a stage, they do their second physical challenge, which is a rhythm band game. After the performance, Tenna rolls the credits, but then changes his mind. He's desperate to continue the show, so he announces a bonus round. They hesitate, but then decide to tell Tenna this will be their last round. Later, they overhear Tenna talking to someone on the phone and realize he's hiding something from them. Susie refuses to do another round until they figure out what's going on. There's a suspicious door that leads to a set of rooms with monitors. After solving a few puzzles, they enter a snowy area. They discover a dark fountain and Toriel sleeping in a ball. A few moments later, Tenna walks in and reveals that she's his trump card, and it seems like he doesn't want her to wake up. After noticing the group, he immediately transports them to the set. They refuse to play another game, and they're forced to fight Tenna. After a few minigames and battles, they manage to escape. As they wander through TV World, they make Tenna's employees leave their jobs, making him even more desperate. La Nino and El Nino also split from Rules and return to their previous relationship. When they get back to the green room, they find it empty and cold. The remaining darkness started turning to stone. When they head back to where they found Toriel, they encounter Tenna. He explains why he wants to play games so badly, showing the Dreamer's house in the past, how people stopped coming to watch TV, and how Toriel and Asgore broke up. Tenna also mentions the Roaring Knight, who appeared one day and told him that if he followed their orders, he could have all the viewers he wanted. That's why Tenna trapped Toriel and wants to keep the group busy. And so another battle starts. After Tenna is finally defeated, he talks about feeling alone and abandoned. Ralsei tries to get him to accept the abandonment, but Susie reassures him, saying that it doesn't have to be this way. He decides they'll find someone in town who would want a TV to make Tenna feel happy. He cheers up and leads them to Toriel, willing to set her free despite the Roaring Knight's plan. But suddenly, Tenna is attacked from behind with a a lot of damage, his arms being severed. Turns out it's the Roaring Knight themselves. Regardless of how well they fight, in the end, the knight knocks all of them down. When the knight tries to take Toriel, someone throws blue spears at them. It's Officer Undyne, who ended up in the Dark World because Toriel called the police earlier that night. The knight decides to capture her instead. Chris and Susie chase them into the Light World. They can't see who it is, but they follow them all the way to the shelter, which appears to contain a Dark World. But before they can enter, the doors are sealed shut. Susie bangs on the door, revealing a hidden panel. It has a security lock with 3 symbols: Pine Tree, Police Badge, and Deltarune. Having no idea what to do, Susie decides to go back to seal the Dark Fountain. Chris stays at the shelter, and suddenly, one of the doors opens for them. And that's how Chapter 3 ends. Chapter 4 starts with Chris and Susie about to seal the Dark Fountain in TV World. They talk about the Roaring Knight. Since Undyne was taken to the shelter, things have gotten serious. Then Toriel wakes Chris up. During breakfast, Toriel asks Susie if she would like to go to church with her and Chris, and she agrees. Susie wants to ask people around the church if they know how to get in the shelter. While Susie is busy drinking juice, Chris goes asking people about the shelter. Chris learns from Alphys and Noelle that her mother, the mayor, has some important info at home, so they have to look for clues there. Susie manages to get Noelle to invite her and Chris over. Susie tells her it's just about working on their school projects. Once they leave the church, Asgore surprises Toriel with some flowers, but she pretends to be busy and walks off. Now you have an option to go either to Noelle's house or to school, if you want to visit Ralsei and other Darkners. Once they arrive at Noelle's house, they walk around together and even discover the sus vent. While Susie distracts Noelle, Chris goes searching for clues. A room with a grey door belongs to Noelle's lost sister, December, or Des. While examining her guitar, Chris finds a code taped to the inside. It says shelter. But before Chris could read the numbers, they suddenly rip their soul out of their body and throw it in one of the boxes. Now you're in control of their soul, and you try to escape through the vent. As you go by the bathroom, you see Asgore cleaning. He talks about a black shard he has and how he can get Toriel to believe him about something and get the family back together before Azrael comes home. In the kitchen, we see Chris on the phone with a mysterious caller. They warn Chris that Susie must not get the guitar with the code. They mention police sacrifice next week and church tonight. When the soul gets close enough, Chris captures it and puts it back in the box. That doesn't stop you from going to the vent again. You get to the basement where you can overhear Susie and Noelle talk. Once you shut off the power, they go to the basement to check. Accidentally, you get trapped under an angel decoration. When they notice it moving, they freak out and Noelle picks it up with a pen, thinking it's just a mouse. When you're left alone, you can finally escape. As you try to get near the Des' guitar, something attacks you from under the bed. It was Chris, hiding there all along. Startled by the noise, Susie and Noelle come into the room as Chris with their soul hides in the closet. You manage to get to the guitar again, despite Chris trying to hit you, making even more noise. Susie checks the closet and finds Chris with the guitar. She grabs the guitar and Noelle, after hesitating, asks her to play and they leave the room. After they do, Chris calls the same person from before. Chris tells them that Susie got the guitar and they say they'll be right there. In the living room, Susie plays the guitar. Then Asgore shows up, saying that he saw Noelle's mother outside the window. She tells Susie to put the guitar away, but it's too late. Her mother, Carol, comes in and grabs the guitar from Susie, sending Noelle to the kitchen. When Susie tries to explain, she tells her to leave and never talk to her daughter again. Susie tells her that she'll take her daughter to the festival tomorrow and runs away. Before Chris leaves, Carol confronts them, letting them know that they're always welcome here anytime. Outside, they talk to Asgore for a bit, and Susie reveals that she saw the code for the shelter in the guitar, but she couldn't memorize it. They head to Chris's house, but the door is locked, so they decide to ask Toriel, who's in the church. As they open the church doors, they realize there's a dark world inside. When they enter, they see a Roaring Knight and try to chase them. Failing to do so, they fall all the way down and find Ralsei. This dark world has stained glass pieces explaining the legend of Deltarune. The prophecy tells us about the 3 heroes, the Roaring Knight, and other important things. Ralsei believes that everything the prophecy says will come true. Eventually, they meet an old man who seems to be lost. They agree to help him and take him to the study. As they travel through corridors and mazes, the old man proves to be more competent than he seems, although sometimes he just likes to mess with them. In the study, there's a locked door they need to open to get to the Dark Fountain. Looking for clues, they encounter Jackenstein and fight him in the dark. After being defeated, he gets himself injured, and Ralsei tries to heal him, but it doesn't work because he is only healing the outside. The old man gives Susie confidence in her healing powers, and she accidentally heals Jackenstein on the inside, and that's how they become friends. After solving a few music puzzles, they return to the study, ready to seal the dark fountain. Before they leave, the old man asks Susie to take his letter with her, but since it's physically impossible, she tries to memorize it to rewrite it later in the light world. As they enter, the night is already there, but the night doesn't seem to stop them from sealing the fountain, and instead escapes through the door to the light world. After Chris and Susie seal the fountain, they end up back in the church, but they realize there is now another dark world behind the locked door. Looking for the code to the door, they head into Father Alvin's office, where Susie discovers a glass case. Inside is a small hammer and a photo covered in dust. She realizes that the old man was Alvin's father, Gerson Boom, and his ashes became the old man in the dark world. She writes Gerson's letter to Alvin from memory and leaves it on the desk. Susie decides the only way to open the door is to ask Gerson himself, so she stabs the ground and creates her own dark world, Second Sanctuary. This world looks a bit different, and many darkners have been turned to stone. While exploring, Chris and Susie learn more about the prophecy. When they're about to see the last prophecy about saving the world, someone shatters it. The shadow figure looks like Gerson. They follow the figure into the darkness and then try to fight it. Susie realizes it's not Gerson, but some kind of a monster. Then suddenly Ralsei appears and destroys the monster. He explains that Gerson is not in this world. One of Gerson's statues came to life and became hostile when Susie made this dark world. Darkners patterned after the memory of a loved one only appear in very specific darknesses. Susie confronts Ralsei about not telling them earlier, and he admits that he's been hiding things about the prophecy and the dark world to avoid hurting them. Susie says she doesn't care how the prophecy ends as long as they're in this together, and Ralsei promises to be more honest with them. After they get the code and seal the fountain, they can finally open the door, and behind it is the third sanctuary. This world is the continuation of the first sanctuary, and this is where the knight is. As they approach the fountain, the knight's blades destroy the path. Luckily, Jackenstein appears and helps them climb, but when the knight breaks more walls, they fall. And then, depending on your actions in battles, either all of their recruits stock up to lift them up, or Jackenstein sacrifices himself to help them get up. When they reach the top, they enter a pitch-black corridor. Each of them gets attacked by the knight, but then Chris's soul lightens up. Susie and Ralsei stay close to Chris to avoid knight's attacks as they go further. By the time they reach the end of the corridor, they're all at 1 HP. Eventually, they reach a round room, where they encounter the knight. Not listening to Susie's remarks, the knight stabs the ground and creates another dark fountain within this dark world. The fountain solidifies, and inside of it hatches a titan. Ralsei tells Chris and Susie to climb on it because it won't attack itself. When they get to the top, Ralsei explains that a titan appears when the fountain's power becomes too strong. It only exists to destroy. Running away from the titan's attacks, they end up fighting its spawn. Eventually they reach the top, where they start a fight against the titan. It seems to be regenerating quickly, so all their attacks are useless. As they're about to give up, suddenly Gerson appears to help them fight the titan. Susie decides to throw Chris inside the titan, where their soul manages to destroy it for good. After they land, Susie realizes she has to talk to Gerson and runs off. Ralsei chases her, realizing she might see the end of the prophecy, but it's too late. Susie shatters the glass and laughs. She says this is stupid because none of them would ever let it happen. Ralsei realizes that he can't change the outcome of the prophecy and starts crying. Chris motivates Ralsei that they need to be like Susie and continue, even in the face of whatever may happen. After sealing the fountain, Chris and Susie wake up in the church. They realize Toriel never came here, and they still don't have a clue how to get inside the shelter, so they head to Chris's house. They walk into Toriel, partying and dancing with Sans. Susie decides to go home, and Chris goes to their room. Later that night, Chris, with their soul in a birdcage, is struggling to sleep because of the noise downstairs. Meanwhile, Susie is right outside, still determined not to let the end of the prophecy come true. Once she leaves, Chris tries to escape through the window. But they are interrupted by a phone call. It's from the same person from before, telling them not to forget what they promised. And that's basically it. Smash that like button if you found it helpful, and subscribe if you want to see more Deltarune content. I'll be playing Chapter 5 live on Twitch, so you can join and say hi. See you next time.